Either you're saying Israel has a legitimate claim to Gaza and the West Bank, or you're saying they do not.
Two different countries impose a harsh blockade in response to rockets against Israel. And one of those two countries gets October 7th and not the other. So one question I have for you is like, why doesn't Hamas attack Egypt? Why can't they spare a single rocket for Egypt if it's all about the blockade and occupation?
No, I mean, obviously, because their hatred of Israel is on a whole different level. And also, like, yeah, I don't know, like, there's
So then it's not all about the blockade and the...
It's not. No, it's not all. A lot of it's about the creation of the state of Israel. A lot of it's about the fact that they view that as their land, that a lot of them did get kicked out of. Of course, all of this stuff is involved.
Hi guys, this is Sahar TV, and in today's video, we'll see the new debate between Coleman Hughes and Dave Smith about, guess what? Israel, Palestine. Let's watch.
And there's no other country that we would call a democracy who behaves this way. It's like, this is, I don't know. I just find this whole thing to be so goofy. Like, either this is Israel, either you're saying Israel has a legitimate claim to Gaza and the West Bank, or you're saying they do not. And if they do not, then they have to stop occupying them. And if they do, then they have to give citizenship to the people that they control. So it's really fundamental Western civilization stuff.
So the analogy to slavery is a bad one for many reasons. But first, yes, Jefferson and Southerners in general, they feared, partly based on Haiti and other examples, that if they gave slaves freedom, it would result in a race war. And this was highly motivating for Southerners. It turned out to be completely wrong. Now, there was a lot of evidence at the time that this wouldn't happen, namely the fact that you had Black people living very peacefully all over the North with no problem. You even had free Blacks in the South with no problem. And so you would have had to cherry pick massively to look at the Nat Turner revolt, say, erase all the other evidence of peaceful coexistence between whites and Blacks and say, we can't let these people have freedom because look at Nat Turner. Not only that, there was no, anytime there was Black leadership, the most famous Black leader, the most important Black leader in the aftermath of the Civil War was Booker T. Washington, right? You can make the same argument about like the Civil Rights Movement, right? We can't give them voting rights because then they're going to make decisions that are going to be terrible. It's going to be a race war. They're going to destroy us. They're going to, slaughter us. Every single popular Black leader, Booker T. Washington, utterly peaceful, had the total faith and devotion of the Black community. He was the most beloved figure, and he was fundamentally nonviolent. Martin Luther King, absolutely the most beloved figure within the Black community, much more so than Malcolm X at the time. And even Malcolm X in his most radical mood, never...
He wasn't a terrorist, yeah.
He wasn't a terrorist. So there was an enormous amount of evidence in the case of African Americans in the United States that the likely result of loosening the chains was not going to be a race war. It's just that people ignored that evidence.
But let's
translate that to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They leave Gaza. Two different countries impose a harsh blockade in response to rockets against Israel. And one of those two countries gets October 7th and not the other. So one question I have for you is like, why doesn't Hamas attack Egypt? Why can't they spare a single rocket for Egypt if it's all about the blockade and occupation?
No, I mean, obviously, because their hatred of Israel is on a whole different level. And also, like, yeah, I don't know, like, there's...
So then it's not all about the blockade and the...
It's not. No, it's not all. A lot of it's about the creation of the state of Israel. A lot of it's about the fact that they view that as their land, that a lot of them did get kicked out of. Of course, all of this stuff is involved. But anyway, back to your point, though.
Hold on. It's because Islam opposes Judaism and Christianity. Judaism first, then Christianity. And that's why they have a problem with us. Not because of Israel. They couldn't care less. It's about the Jews in the region. That's all.
But like, so say there was a higher risk. And again, I wasn't saying, I wasn't saying, a lot of times when people make logical analogies, people say, well, that's a bad analogy because the situations aren't the same. But there's a difference between equating two different things and making a logical analogy. The claim isn't that they're the same. But let's say there was going to be a real increase in crime, or let's say there was that some of the black leaders were more radical and were, hold on, let me just finish.
Sure.
And were advocating violence. Is the answer then continue the institution of slavery? I mean, the thing is no, right? It's obviously, and look, the thing about this is with all of this stuff, with all of this, I just feel like to be a defender of Israel requires you to not be like fair-minded to both groups here. It requires you to think of like, oh, but think about the danger that the Israelis might have to deal with if they were to give these people a state. It's like, yeah, think about the danger that the Palestinians are in being militarily occupied. Like, how are you going to sit here and tell these people that you guys have to embrace nonviolence, your leaders all have to be nonviolent leaders, while the Israeli leaders can be as horrifically violent as they want to? You know, you call Hezbollah a terrorist organization, you call Hamas a terrorist organization. I'm like, fair enough. I don't really object to that categorization. I don't exactly see why the IDF wouldn't also be categorized as a terrorist organization.
So,
it's like,
but here's the crucial difference. The crucial difference is that Israeli society, as we've discussed in this conversation, if they feel they have a partner for peace, are capable of negotiating in good faith and making an offer because they don't want to serve in the army for the rest of time. They don't want to send their boys to fight these wars. Hamas rejects the two-state solution, period. So,
but we just talked about, so does Benjamin Netanyahu.
But Israel is a democracy and they will vote Netanyahu out of power if they feel that the other side is capable and interested.
But they've made him their longest-serving prime minister in their country's history. So, like, they're not voting him out of power that much.
Hold on. This happened, as you yourself admitted, not even reluctantly. I don't mean to phrase it that way. The second Intifada, Israel offered a two-state end of conflict, period. It was rejected by the Palestinians, and then the second Intifada was launched. This was, mothers sending their kids on two different buses to schools because a bus was getting blown up every 3 days, right? Which was traumatizing for a country the size of New Jersey. I can't imagine how I would react having grown up in New Jersey if there was 2 bombs going off a week just in my state alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would demand of my government to absolutely do what it had to do to make us safe. Not only that, the fact that this came right after an offer of peace and what Shlomo Ben Ami called the biggest effort ever to pressure an international leader on any issue to end this conflict, because the world, my God, we have to see this conflict end at some point. It's so heartbreaking. The problem with this is that Israeli society can move because it's a democracy. Hamas can't move. Hamas is absolutely committed to rejecting the only solution that could bring an end to this conflict. And so Hamas is like a rock, whereas Israel, object as much as you want to Netanyahu. I'm not going to defend him. I'm not going to defend Smotrich. I'm not going to defend Ben-Gvir. Israel is a democracy that can move to the left if the opportunity came, sign a peace treaty that will be inked for all time.
Yep.
How the hell do we get that with Hamas running the Gaza Strip when every single time they are asked, they say, we reject any alternative for all time, except between the river and the sea?
Yeah, there actually have been different periods of time where Hamas leaders have said they would accept 67 borders, but they have also a lot of times said they wouldn't, and so
including over and over and over again recently, and in their charter.
Yeah, I'm not even like arguing with you on that detail, but it's always like when you say like Hamas. First of all, I actually disagree with fundamentally with your premise that democracies like have this ability to move. I think actually one of the kind of counterintuitive, strange realities is that often democracies get very stuck. And for example, like the political system in the United States of America really has not like fundamentally changed nearly as much as the political system in China has over, say, like the last 40 years. And they did it through a one-party dictatorship. They still call themselves because the one party says business is good now, and then all of a sudden it's a drastically different thing than it was before. But regardless of that, yeah, but like you can say there's a lot of things Hamas could do that would be a lot better than the things that Hamas has done and could do now that would be better than the things they're doing. Israel also can end the war. It's not true that only one side could do the things that would end the war. I don't even know if you can call it a war.
If Israel ends the war and Hamas remains in power, that's not ending the war. That's putting a Band-Aid that's going to get ripped in the next few years when the next October 7th happened. They saw the world's support to their horrific attack. They realized that their propaganda works. They realized that it's very easy to recruit people like Dave Smith and other propagandists to speak on behalf of Palestinians. And by rewarding them with the Palestinian states, they don't understand. You're rewarding terrorism.
But
They
Israel
could end this
could.
war, but Hamas is just going to restart the war.
It's not
the
even
first
really a war,
opportunity they
man.
get.
Like a war, you kind of think of as like two governments with militaries battling. It's a captive
Hamas has
people.
what,
It's a
20,000, 30,000 people? That's not a war? Hamas has 30,000 fighters or whatever it is?
Yeah, no, it's a captive people who have been held stateless without a military of their own.
By the way, a war can be held between a terrorist organization and an army. By definition, it can. It doesn't have to be by two countries or two governments. It can be by a terrorist organization, aka the Taliban, and the United States. Also, that was a war.
Being like annihilated. I mean, like, yeah, I don't think war is exactly the right word. But regardless of that, Israel also has the opportunity. Israel could simply say, we're going to stop militarily occupying the West Bank. We're going to pull those, and we're going to live in 67 borders.
Just to clarify, Israel isn't occupying the West Bank. It's not the West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. The only place it's got security control over is Area B and Area C. They're sharing security control with the PA, and Area A is controlled fully by the PA as per the Oslo Accord signed in 1995. So you can say whatever you want. These areas are not occupied territories because it was never a state. The only place that illegally annexed that is Jordan.
And you do what you want to do, but if you attack us, we're responding. They could do that too, and they have not done that.
Yeah,
but
well,
I do just
hold on.
again,
So,
hold on.
again-
Let me just get a points out here because I'm listening to what you have to say. Again, I find this to be like kind of fascinating. Like every time I debate or have a discussion like this about the topic, I'm just always struck by the fact that you have like we're halfway around the world. There is a long-standing conflict that's going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But yet, when you talk about this again, and which, by the way, I'm with you on, I think we should think about, like, what would it be like to live in a state the size of New Jersey where there's school buses being blown up every day? Listen, I live in the state of New Jersey and I have little kids. Like, when you say that, I'm listening and I'm like genuinely trying to put myself in that position. And by the way, I am not saying I'm like a very good person. I think I would go to a pretty bad place pretty quickly if I thought one of my kids were threatened. However, in this conflict, Gaza is a substantially smaller place than Israel and has way more bombings going off, way more innocent people being killed. And so I just always find it interesting that, like, okay, we're going to put ourselves in the Israeli shoes. Like, okay, I'm fine to do that. Let's do that. Could we also attempt to do that to the other side here? Like,
easily. I'll do it right now. I'll do it right now. Hold on. I'll do it right now.
Thousandfold
I'll do it
worse.
right now, Dave. This is the point I tried to make before, but I don't think I made it precisely enough. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of Palestinians for a moment. Now, we know from the history of the 20th century, whether it is the partition of India and Pakistan or the partition of Sudan and South Sudan more recently, that when you have a situation like this, a gruesome situation where two peoples can't get along and there's slaughtering on both sides, it seems like pretty much the best formula we have is something like a partition along roughly ethnic lines. It's not a perfect solution by any means, but Sudan and South Sudan are fighting with each other as states a lot less than they did when it was one state for 50 years of brutal civil war. So, if I'm a Palestinian in Gaza right now, purely looking from my own perspective, sure, I would absolutely want Israel to end the war, to alleviate my immediate suffering. But I would also like to think that I would understand the regime that rules Gaza right now is committed to a forever war against Israel, which means if Israel withdraws, ends the war right now, leaves Hamas in power, Gaza is again on borrowed time until the next time that Hamas is able to find a crack in the armor, which always happens. And so, in addition to wanting Israel to end the war, I would really want to see some massive international effort to get rid of Hamas. And I don't know how you do that, because Hamas embeds itself in the civilian population and uses them as a shield. But I would understand, just purely from the point of view of me wanting, I'd love to live in a situation like South Sudan and Sudan. We don't have to love each other, but we're not at each other's throats. We could be a frozen conflict like North and South Korea. We can hate each other. The only way you get to a frozen conflict is with a ruling entity in Gaza that could actually agree to a frozen conflict because it's what they want. So how do you get that without getting rid of Hamas? And this is from the Palestinian perspective.
Yeah, I guess it kind of is. I don't really think it's a very reasonable way to look at it from the Palestinian perspective.
Videos?
I'll attach the full video in the link below. I just want to say, Dave's premise of the Gazans who are living in fear of being bombed, you have to realize that Israel bombs in Gaza only after Gaza attacks Israel. 2008, they fired rockets. 2012, they fired rockets. 2014, they fired rockets. 2021, they fired rockets. October 2023, they invaded Israel. You don't want people to die? No problem. Stop invading and attacking Israel. It's that simple. So no, it's not the same, because they are targeting civilians with their rockets, while we try to attack their terrorists. Same applies to the first and second Intifada. They try to attack civilians, and we try to go back inside and attack terrorists. Do some civilians die in the way? Yes, it's an armed conflict. People die in the way. We don't do it on purpose, and they do. So no, it's not the same at all. But I think it's a brilliant, brilliant podcast of Coleman Hughes and Dave Smith having a respectful conversation about the topic. It's a 3-hour and 30-minute long conversation. So please, I'm going to attach it down below. Watch the full thing. It's worth the watch. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. If you'd like to watch more of my stuff, please check out my channel down below. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that notification button so you can be notified every time I upload new content. If you'd like to support me and the channel financially, you can do that using Buy Me Coffee or Patreon down in the links below. Also, we now have a Discord that you can join down in the link below. And now you can become a YouTube member and enjoy specific YouTube perks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.